My name's Laura Blake, and I'm originally from the UK. You can probably hear that I'm British, but I moved to West Sweden to study an MFA at the University of Gothenburg, specialising in textile art. But the University of Gothenburg's the second biggest city in Sweden. It's in the south part of the country. But they actually have a campus which is 2 hours north in the countryside near Sweden. We have here in this part of Western Sweden, I live in a small town called DALSLAND in DALSLAND, which is in the red section here. And there I live near this lake, which I can see from my studio. It doesn't look like that today, but it's very rainy here, in fact. But it's beautiful, and I've studied at the school and actually stayed here afterwards, where they offer metal, textile and woodwork educations. So there's naturally a very nice community of craft and makers and artists living here and operating in the area. So I've stayed, and I'm building a co-working space here with other people involved in the area. So when I first moved here, I moved here to do an MA because I was a bit confused in my practice, but also I was making work like this at the time. This is a silent piece. It's just a large fabric piece being moved by the fan. And this is a very large fabric piece celebrating scale and my surroundings, and it's made with silk, and all of the fabric is hand dyed and stitched together. And I loved making this sort of work, but I was struggling a bit to have depth and find like my artistic context in the world. So I was talking with a friend about this, and they're a theatre artist who specialise in working with disabled audiences. And I talked about my desire to use sensory interaction and interaction materials as a way of connecting people to their surroundings and to each other. And she mentioned that my work is actually perfect for being inclusive with neurodiverse audiences. So neurodiverse refers to anyone who might be autistic or have Alzheimer's or ADHD, something that alters your perception of the world to be something other than neurotypical. So we realised there's a lot of crossover in our work, and I invited her to come over and collaborate on our ideas that we would use towards making larger art installations for neurodiverse audiences. So we made lots of tests with sound and weight and scent, and we invited local special needs schools to come and see the work and test it and see how they reacted to it. This is the results of that. Some of these videos are being a bit jumpy now, I think, while it's online. Apologise. So I really fell in love with this process of inviting audiences to come and see the work and co-designing it with them and developing artwork from their reactions. And it made me realise how exclusive the art world is sometimes, how it really prevents a lot of people in society from viewing art, whether that's the building or the artwork itself. And the focus for the rest of my research at the University of Gothenburg became how craft can be inclusive to neurodiverse audiences. And this resulted in me creating this piece, which is Performing Craft. It's a space to block out any outside distractions and to be able to simply be and be present in the moment. And it's filled with objects that are weighted and are tactile and are scented, so you can be fully free from distractions from outside and interact with the objects if you so wish. And I continued with this work after my MA, and I worked on this exhibition Sinnerikt, which is commissioned by a project called Sense, who are a research project based in Sweden also, researching inclusive arts. And I worked on this again with my friend Ellie. It was a collaboration between the two of us. And we worked also with a young artist called Greta Mcmillan, who is a Scottish young artist. She's a wheelchair user, and she paints using her eyes, using a computer program, computer technology, which enables her to paint using eye tracking. And she'd made a painting called Staffin Beach, which she made on the coast of Scotland. And we used this as a starting point for our exhibition. And we created 7 installations that use sound or weight or tactility or scent to create the experience of, in a very, very abstract manner, of walking from across a beach from dawn to dusk. And there was one piece in particular for me, which was significant from this exhibition, which is you can see it here on the right, which is a wooden piece, which is interactive and takes the form and colours and sounds of waves on this same Scottish island that Greta was on. And when it's interactive, it looks like this. So these pieces combine my prior research from my master's, but they also allow me to use woodwork, which I also studied part-time before I came to move to Sweden. But I realized that I hate making furniture, but as a craftsperson, it's still a process that I think in. I have the ability to think in wood, and I really enjoy being able to combine textiles and woodwork together. So when I make these pieces, each of the sticks here is from a large piece. It's from a plank of birch from a tree, and I turn it into the sticks and I dye them using textile dye. And then each of them is hand sewn onto the fabric they are hanging from. So it's a very time laborious process, which I really, really enjoy. So these wooden pieces have really become the focus of my practice. This is the first piece that it came from, which was in my MA. It allows me to obsess over colour and palette, which I usually find on journeys and my surroundings. And I find colours get stuck in my head and my body, and they come out in these pieces. Here's a detail image of the last piece as well. They're all made with birch wood because that is a light in colour and weight. So yeah, these are the ones that I use. And last year I made this piece, Blomma, which means blue in Swedish. And this was made for Dalheimer's Hus in Gothenburg. It's a sensory centre for people with additional needs. This one is the biggest one I've made yet. It's 175 centimetres wide. It was a very, very laborious process in making it. But the process of sewing the sticks onto the fabric is one of my favourite things to do in the world. I've never really been able to meditate but this is meditation for me. The latest piece I've made is a plain coloured one, actually. It's called Tournetresque, made for a private client who wanted to be able to have tactile interaction in their own home. And this one is named after a Arctic lake, after which I went past on a train journey through Lapland at the end of last year. And it had a storm over it at the time. It was incredibly moody. And yeah, when I was asked to work in neutral colours and greys and whites, this is immediately what came to mind. So now I'm tactile art and disability arts on a bit of a COVID pause, but I'm developing palettes and tests to make these works. I'm making a large sculptural work for myself. Well, to be shown, but yeah, I'm making it now and developing color palettes and tests in how it can become more sculptural, from hanging from a hanging piece into one that becomes more all-encompassing around you. Yeah, so I'm developing the tactile and audio elements of it as well. And tack for listening, as they say in Sweden. Thank you. Hi, so I guess now I'm happy to open up for any questions or comments. I welcome constructive comments as well. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions if you'd like to.
Hi, Laura, this is Anisha in
Hi.
Niwot. Hi, I'm in Niwot, Colorado. And hi, I love your work. I've worked with a lot of diverse audiences in various things. I'm a textile artist myself. I've done textiles, I've done theater, I've done poetry, all kinds of stuff with diverse populations. And so that first piece, my question, I noticed somebody was laying prone on their stomach, and then they had bags, and they're weighted bags, is that correct? Right.
Yeah.
So they had weighted bags and the colors were various colors. Did the participants actually choose the colors that they wanted on their backs?
Well, between me and myself, Ellie, the artist I was working with, we developed a color palette. So these objects were pre-made, so they weren't picking the objects there. That they didn't decide the colors before they were in the room, but the objects were placed around the room and they picked them freely as to which ones they'd like. So there was different weights. Some of them were heated as well, so people could pick their own experience, and we used different fabrics and weights so people could choose their own experience in the room.
This is Dorothy in France. I just curious, when you said you put tiny little holes at the top of the birch to sew it in. Is that how you sew it?
Yeah. So my first studies before my master's, my bachelor program was actually in embroidery. This is a very unsophisticated form of embroidery, but it's in my body somehow that so it's drilling between 3 and 5 holes and then holding it up and stitching it through. It's very manual and time consuming, but I really enjoy it. Repetition is something that I'm really into.
Yeah, hi, this is Les Johnson in Alabama, and I have a question. When you were in the university, did you work with anyone in like the psychology department or anything for to I don't know, talk about how this might be used therapeutically or the benefits thereof?
Yeah, so it's I tried to get in touch with them a bit, but also an MA is so short in 2 years, and I was based in a craft department that it in further studies I'd like that to be a thing. But it's also a really interesting comment when it comes into, is this care or is it therapy? Because I also would like this. I believe it has those elements to it, and it is therapy, but I also want my work to be art for art's sake, for people who might not necessarily go to an art gallery themselves. So yeah, that's that's how I see it.
Well, I think viewing art is therapeutic in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
And so that was just my curiosity.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Hey, Laura, this is Anisha again. I have one other question. And are any of the participants, are they artists? And have you done any kind of work or study with how your art influences their art, if that makes sense?
Yeah, a couple of them. So in the process of developing the interactive exhibition that me and Ellie made in Sweden, we worked with a young artist herself, and then it's something I'm really interested in, is how can you collaborate with someone with different needs, and what is that collaboration, and how can you make it authentic collaboration? So that's something that I'm actually trying to write as a research project for my next thing, is to like really try and get into the nitty-gritty of how you can collaborate with people. But yeah, I haven't got to the point where I've then looked at how our interaction influences their art afterwards, but it is a beginning stage that I'm at, of how to, of interacting with artists who are neurodiverse. Yeah.
Very nice, thanks.
Thank you everyone for coming. Thanks for the opportunity. Bye-bye.